So you were just going off saying all the good stuff while we weren't recording. So I had to do my usual, just press record and let it flow.
Just press
Because this
record.
is Alpha Flow.
Alpha Flow.
You know, it's funny, right? I did that silly introduction on the last episode,
Mm-hmm.
but it actually kind of works having an intro.
I
I was
like it.
listening to it and I was like, it's kind of funny. It kind of works. I don't know if I want to put so much effort in that I create all these trailers for us. You know, the 3 things you need to do are boom. This
Listen to
episode,
the
we're talking about. Well, they don't make that noise, but you can tell I'm a bit stir crazy. I've been in the house basically since Tuesday. Today is Sunday. We'll let you behind the fourth wall for a second.
Yes.
My little one had a stomach bug, which. So yes, I'm a bit stir crazy. I'm excited to be back in my office. Excited we had to reschedule this, but it's it was one of those situations like Saturday. He was like back to normal, and it makes you appreciate the little things. You're like, oh, he's being himself again.
Yeah.
And especially for someone like him, who's on the spectrum and stuff. It's like you're like, I just love you how you are. I'm just so happy you're back to normal.
Yes, you're back. Ooh,
Yeah.
we could talk about that. I was, yes, it's Sunday. It's Sunday evening actually when we're here together, and I was thinking, I want this to feel almost like a fireside chat, right? It's been a full week, a great weekend, and going into another amazing week. I'm very big about setting intentions on Sunday nights and really determining what this week is going to look like.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just make this a conversation for us, which folds right into what we want to talk about, which is communication. And let's just keep it simple. Like communication, it's very basic, is two people sharing thoughts.
Could
Maybe,
it can be more than 2 people?
well, I'm talking the most basic. The
Okay.
most basic could absolutely be more than two people. And it's more than two people right now, if anyone is listening. But it doesn't even have to be sharing thoughts. It might even just be sharing feelings. Like communication is the most simple and most complex thing at the same time. And I think
Yeah.
that's why we struggle with it, as human beings. It's why I have a 6-figure career and you have a 6-figure career, because helping people communicate and get their desired outcomes.
Yeah.
So, you and I get to communicate tonight. Feels a little different, feels a little more
I
relaxed.
know I should have brought the wine. I was going to finish the bottle of wine I started Friday,
I
but
really want to go to that distillery in
well,
Hillsborough
we
and
should.
do
Yeah, we should.
trivia
We should put
night.
a let's put a thing on the calendar there. But the interesting thing with communication is also I was thinking about this in preparation for our fireside chat without fire.
Hmm.
Well, I guess we bring the fire.
We bring the fire.
You you don't even need to communicate with words. And we did this at theatre school
Yep.
when I was like in my teens. We did this exercise where you wouldn't say anything, but the teacher would give you an emotion and the way you came in the door had
Mhm.
to display that emotion.
Mhm.
And it was a really interesting way of looking at how you communicate because you can walk in to any room and communicate without saying a thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, most people walk into a room unintentional about it, communicate something that they actually do not mean to be communicating. It's all perception.
Yeah.
Like when you walk through your office to go to your office. If you're a leader, are you saying good morning to your people, or are you just like all on task and hoping no one talks to you? Right?
Yeah, I've worked at places like that where you don't want the workforce to start having to guess what kind of moods the leader's in.
Hmm.
It's like when the boss walks in. This is stuff, places I worked at years ago when I was younger. The boss walks in, you like everyone's kind of second guessing. Oh, is he in a good mood today?
Yeah.
You know, and just yeah, like you said, just how you kind of show up can really determine how the rest of your communication can be.
How's the
And this
safety?
doesn't
Like,
just
are
have
you
to be
creating?
in business either, right? This can be
No.
on relationship levels.
How you walk through the door? Do you need to
Yeah.
sit in your car for 5 minutes before you walk through the door? So sometimes there's actually something going on, but a lot of times people are either really task focused or people focused. It's just a natural behavioral style.
Yeah.
So someone's coming in the door like a high D, they're actually just thinking about what needs to get done and they have a great sense of urgency. They want to get it done to take care of their people, right? They're doing it from their heart. There you go. To take, and if, for those of you who aren't watching, Paolo is double thumbing himself,
That that's so weird.
pointing him at
There
himself.
you go. With his yes, okay.
Um, they're thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got to get this done to take care of my people. Well, meanwhile, when you walk through the office and you don't say good morning to anyone, even though you're actually want to get to your office to get to work to take care of those exact people, you've just done the complete opposite of what your intentions were.
Yeah.
I was typing while you were talking because these stats always change. And what popped up 93% of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah, I believe that.
That's why Zoom camera is on. And like, I bet, like, I think of you and Fred, having children on the spectrum where verbal communication is probably not always the first. Well, I know for Fred, for sure, it was non existent for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, how amazing is it? It doesn't even matter the words that you're saying or how you're saying them. It's what is your body language?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Well, and what you just said there, I think, is huge when it comes to communication. Something I'm very cognizant about or cognizant of. Is that the right word? Sunday night, I can't even think straight. Um, you could say the same thing in two different ways, and how it comes across is completely different.
Yeah.
And I think, when people hear about we need to work on our communication. You hear it with couples, you hear it in business leaders and the workforce. It doesn't just mean you have to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest misconception people have about communication. It's like, we need to communicate better. That doesn't mean you just have to tell someone about something. It's how you tell people, how, even the unspoken stuff. How is the culture? Because that's all communication.
Yeah.
So I'd love for the audience to kind of leave with a few things we can kind of share with them on how to improve that, because we can all improve no matter how good we think we are at communicating.
Yeah.
And there are some people who are absolutely fantastic and it's just natural to them. I'd put you in that category actually, but it takes a lot of work, and sometimes we don't even realize we're doing certain things that prevent us getting the right message across to whoever we're trying to communicate with.
Yeah. Being a great communicator starts with listening, like really listening.
Oh, I was about to say that. It was on my points here.
I
Yeah.
think that's where I've done the most work. And here's the first key point takeaway: heard, helped, or hugged. And Alexander taught me the heard or helped part. And then there's a new book that's coming out, and I don't unfortunately remember the name of it, where he added in the hugged part. But like, I'm a solutions finder, I'm a rescuer. Like, those are just
Yeah.
naturally how my brain works. You have a challenge, my brain jumps instantly into solutions mode. How are we going to fix it? What are we going to do? And I'm not even really listening. I'm half listening, but my brain is thinking of all of these ways to tackle this problem so that I can fix it and help you fix it. And then what happens is I'm not really listening. And when the person never wanted the solution, they only wanted me to hear them, I give them all these solutions. And then I get pissed off and frustrated when they don't actually take action on one of the solutions. So that was talking with Alexander. And he said to me, Mom, sometimes I just need you to listen and hug me, you know? And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, okay. So, one, I ask, do you need me? And I ask this now with people: do you just need to be heard, or do you actually want me to help you find a solution to fix this?
Yeah.
And if they're like, oh no, I want help, I'm like, cool. I just let my brain go. If they're like, I just really need to be heard, I just really need to get this off my chest, I'm like, I relax. I just tell myself, like, okay, brain, you don't have to fix this. You just have to be here and listen. So, ask people, What do you need from me right now? Do you just need me to listen to you, just need to be heard, or do you actually want to be helped? Um, and I'm sure you've experienced this before as well. You get frustrated with people when they're not taking action to fix it. So if they've already told you, hey, I don't actually want to do something, it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because I consider myself a really good listener, especially I think from the fitness, the 2 decades I have training people, you just learn to naturally just listen.
Hmm.
And I'm very inquisitive, so I'm always asking questions. But at the same time, I struggle with that too, where, particularly in my personal relationships, where I want to get to the solution. I like, let's stop the small chat. Let's just get to the, like, we'll fix this right now.
Yeah.
And that I know that can come across as not listening.
Yeah.
So that's something I've had to, and you've kind of mentioned that to me before. So I've definitely tried my best. I'm sure the missus is listening to this and laughing, but
Those are
that.
those relationships, the Mrs. relationships, those close. When you have emotional safety in a relationship where you can feel like the person's not just going to walk away from you if you make a misstep in communication, or if you for me it was hard to kind of admit, like I was so stuck on me wanting to be heard and me wanting to be understood, and I would be so frustrated because it really hurt, like this person is not, they're not understanding it how I mean it, and like I care about this person and now they're upset with me, which is almost shocking. And then I would just kind of like continue to try to bulldoze down making them understand. And actually this happened with Ben. I was like, what's your like what's your perfect outcome? Like we know now, like there's certain times text message is no longer acceptable. If things starting to get escalated, it's like you have to stop texting, put a pin in it if you can't talk right then, or figure out when we can talk. And he was like, he's like, an outcome for me would be that you understand. So we had a call. I'm like, okay, I can do that. Had a call. And I wanted to say something. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to respond. And I'm like, no, I promised I wasn't going to do that. And at the end of it, I'm like, I understand. Didn't mean I agreed, but I understood what he was saying. And I was only able to understand it because I just kept my freaking mouth shut and listened. And I
Yeah.
wasn't, yeah. So like that was challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also comes across when, going back to how we communicate without words, that
Mm,
also your body language when you're listening is really important.
mhm.
If you're looking down when someone's trying to be vulnerable with you and communicate, or if we're in the workplace and someone is trying to tell you something that they're perhaps a bit nervous about telling you, and you're looking down, or you're just kind of sat there, doing something, responding to an email at the same time, there needs to be a bit of grace. Like, I know when certain people are doing that, it's not a personal thing, like they're just taking care of something, like,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, you need to be aware of how you listen, how you actually come across while you're listening, because that can cause huge communication breakdowns straight away.
Yep. It's also why I insist any of my coaching that I do virtually, especially with disc validations, they have to have camera on
Hmm.
because all of where I know to ask more questions is not from what they're verbally telling me. It's from when I'm watching them respond and they get a smile, or I see their eyebrow raise, or like they take a millisecond, or if they're looking up into the, there's when you're looking up into the right, it's typically you're going into like a past scenario, a future scenario. If you're looking down, it's you're reflecting on something. You're kind of thinking of something that already happened. So that's like my cue to go, hey, sounds like, do you have a story that happened? Maybe where there's an example of that.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, imperative. I felt a little guilty yesterday. My brother came over and we were chatting, and it was, he was telling we were having some serious conversation. And I was also having a conversation on text message, and I was like, crap, I'm listening to him. I'm also texting this person. And I'm like, this actually doesn't feel great. And to the point where I thought about it again today, and I was like, I really should have just been like, hey, I'll get back to you in a few minutes or something, and just paid
Yeah,
attention.
well, actually, we need to make that. more of a normal thing actually when we're texting people just to say, because when we had like MSN and AOL, it was
Mhm.
like BRB, right?
Yep.
Be right back,
Yep.
gotta go. And you didn't take offense to that. But like with
Yeah.
texting, it is interesting, right? Like you kind of think, well, they haven't responded. They've, and they read my message. Like,
I
are
know.
they ignoring me now? Why am
Oh my god, it annoys the heck out of me. Just tell me, like, just tell me, because I'm like, okay, we're in a thing, and then it's like nothing, and I'm like, all right, guess they're gone.
exactly?
All
We
it
need to
is like,
normalize that.
what?
We need to normalize that.
We do need to
Um,
normalize, and it's so funny because people will be like, "Oh, you're such a good communicator. Like, you're always responsive, or letting me know, like, hey, I'm not going to be available for the next few hours." Because I
right.
I really am big on setting expectations, and this is where it comes in, like transparency versus honesty. Like, I have transparency with you. I have transparency in my personal relationship. I have transparency with my partner, Sam. If he's like, oh, hey, can we meet at 4 o'clock today? And I look down, I'm like, oh, that's my gym time. And I still feel a little guilty for keeping my self-care time. I still do it. But I remember having that moment. I'm like, well, I can either just tell him I have an appointment, because that's the truth. And that's what I'll normally do with someone. That's being honest. But being
Yeah.
transparent is, you know what? I've got that time set for the gym and I really don't want to miss it. And he's like, yeah, like you shouldn't miss it. That's the difference. Like, hey, I'm going to go out. That's being honest. I'm going out with my girlfriend and we're going to go to this place. That's transparency. I don't want the people I care about guessing or wondering.
Yeah. That's a
I,
great. That's a great point.
I think that's such a manipulative tool, even when people don't feel like they're maybe not intending to be manipulative. I don't
But
know. And maybe I
I
give too
might,
much information, who knows?
I much prefer being completely open about, yeah, and like you said, don't want to leave anyone guessing. But to counter that, and we all need to look at ourselves when I say this, are you giving the people in your world the space to be upfront and honest with you?
Yeah,
Like if Sam, in that example, like if Sam had an issue with you doing that during, I mean, you don't really do, it's not 9 to 5, but like
yeah,
the job comes first kind of
yeah,
thing, then, that you may have had to have been like, oh, I've got something with my kids, like something that's more
yeah,
acceptable so I definitely have some people that I could say that it's hard to be upfront in
yeah.
some circumstances because
Oh,
you don't want
yeah.
to hurt their feelings or so we all at the same time, and it's all part of communication really is a dance. It's a
Mhm.
dance of body language, dance of assuming what the intentions are. All of
Mhm.
that stuff plays into it. I mean, even just I was thinking about this as you were talking about body language and things like that, of like why I much prefer doing things in person.
Mhm.
I'm much more comfortable doing that because I can see all the little things with body language and all the, you can feel the energy of people.
Mhm.
And there are certain things that you can do to help ease someone else in a conversation, just leaning forward when they ask a question.
Mhm.
You might, and people who watch the video of this might notice, I often sit with my head turned to the side, especially when I'm listening to someone. And if you go back and watch the couple videos we put out of the podcast, you'll notice that my head's always to the side.
Mhm.
And I learned that it may have been Chris Voss. It was a body language person. It might have been Chris Voss talking about when you put your head to the side in the animal kingdom, that's your way of showing that you're open to be vulnerable to them, because obviously
Mhm.
the animals go for the neck to
Mhm.
bite. So if you do that around someone, they feel more relaxed around you because they see that you don't see them as a threat, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So just doing all these little things you can do to improve how you come across, because there are some people who are like, I've got a resting bitch face, or people always think I'm rude and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it can just be little things like that, how you show up. And I'm one of those people always think I'm quiet and don't, but that's another topic we're gonna get onto in a few minutes. But yeah, just all these little things that you can do to help improve the communication dance.
Yeah. And what you just made me think of is something called rapport, right?
Hmm.
So people often think like rapport, when you have rapport with someone, that you have to like be really good friends with them. You don't. Rapport is actually the feeling of liking. So
Yes.
it's not. when I work with corporations, in a room of 25, 100, 500 people, the expectation is if that's a room of leaders or people that want to be leaders, they should be able to build rapport with every single person in that room. Does that mean I have an expectation that they're all good friends and that they go out? Absolutely not. But it's that feeling of liking, and it happens typically within the first 30 seconds of communication, from the approach to the words that you
Yeah.
use to the cadence that you speak with. There's also something called mirror and matching. So when you're talking with someone, you can
Yeah.
mirror what they're doing. They scratch their nose, you might put your hand up and scratch your lip. They cock their head, you cock their head. You can either do the
They grab a
mirror of
drink.
it.
You grab a
Yes.
drink. You
Well,
know?
and then you can actually play a game with it if you get this reminds me of working with horses. There's something when you're working with horses where you'll be lunging them, right? And you're sending them away from you. And horses, like people, we're herd animals. We're meant to be together. So when you're sending the horse out and, moving them, moving their feet, getting their brain going, there is something where, and this can be a horse that wanted no part of you, right? Or maybe even a horse that was aggressive or multiple things. Once you get their head moving forward and then you let them come into you and like you'll drop your gaze, go into a very non-threatening stance. And when they come over, there's actually a connection that will happen that if you turn and walk, that horse will be like right at your shoulder, like following you. And that's kind of what you want to do with people, right? You want to create a space to welcome them in, and we do that with our words and our body language. And what you do with one person to win them at the highest level, if you did that with another behavioral style, you would lose them at the highest level. So
Yeah.
um, it's that all comes from disc work, and I won't go into it now, but obviously I'm very passionate about it. And it's not about you changing who you are. People will be like, oh, I have to change this. No, absolutely not. Like,
Hmm.
you've gotten where you've gotten for a reason. Now we're looking at what's no longer serving you. Where are you not getting your desired outcome? Where are you having challenges communicating? My high D leaders are constantly like, how do I soften? And the people that work for them are constantly like, this person is terrible. They make me feel horrible. They yell at me. They're defeated and they don't know what to do. And that high D leader is like, I want people to speak up. I want people to own their
Yeah.
areas. I want them to make decisions. I want that so bad. Help me do that. Meanwhile, they've created a completely unsafe environment that they have no realization that they've done that. And they've taken their people that they want to empower and they have really just made them retreat and they're just going through the
Yeah.
motions.
Talking
So,
of rapport, that's actually one of my biggest pet peeves with um, some training on it's really sales, and I mean it should apply to anything, right? Like rapport doesn't mean some small chit chat at the beginning.
mhm.
Rapport can be, like you said, is implying or getting someone to like you or feel comfortable with you to allow you to continue communicating with them. And having small chat doesn't always there are certain types of people that will enjoy that small chat, and I do engage with them on
Yeah,
that. But someone will like you if you just show up as authentic.
yeah.
And like, I'm a high D, I like to just get straight to the point.
Mhm.
And I had this sales call with a woman a little while back, and she was just like, before I even spoke, she was like, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm a high D.
Yeah.
I just want to know the details. Like, I don't want to be rude, but just
What is
please,
it?
can
What
you
does it
just, blah, blah,
cost?
blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, building rapport is just really showing up as authentic
Mhm.
and letting that person see that you're just going to be who you are with them, because then they'll feel comfortable to be themselves.
Yeah. And
So
remember,
it
like, we're
doesn't,
human
yeah,
beings.
yeah,
We're just human beings. And even those high Ds, this was the call I had this week. Just like a tough leader, right? Really, really good coming out of the military. Um, and people needle him a lot because they just think he's like this like
yeah,
unbreakable thing. And he was like, he actually said to me, he's like, and it actually really hurts my feelings. And I'm like, well, do you tell people that? He's like, I know, no, I just tell them like, not today, not today. Like he just gets harder. And I was like, instead of getting harder, try getting softer, right? Because his eye was naturally much higher. And it's like doing the opposite. when you want to protect yourself, actually getting softer and leaning into that interpersonal is the thing to do. But you have to let people know, like, hey, I know you're kidding around, but it actually makes me feel bad, or it actually hurts my
Yeah.
feelings.
It's funny, just a little bit of a tangent you're saying that. So I'm going to England in about a month, actually, a month
Oh,
tomorrow,
nice.
with Mason for a few days. And I was saying to my English friends just like how much I can't wait just to be in the pub and
Mhm.
just the way English people are, you'd fit right in because you just make everybody makes fun of everybody.
Yeah.
And everyone's cracking jokes on each other. No one gets offended or upset.
Yeah.
And that again there's a communication style to that, right? Like we all know that we like each other. No one's gonna say yes.
Boom,
Yes,
right
someone
there.
might take things too far a little bit on
Yeah.
occasion, but we're all there with the same. As it comes, expectations have been set, boundaries have been
Mhm.
set,
Yes.
and it just makes
There
for the communication to be that much easier.
Oh my God, I'm like jumping out. Yes. Like, you can't have candor without care. And you said it right there.
Yeah.
You already know you're all friends. You all like each other. Boom. There's the caring part. So when I know you
Well, and
care about
I thought
me,
it doesn't even mean that you have like people that you've never met before, but because
yeah,
they're part of this group you're in,
yeah,
it's fine. You go
yeah.
for it.
Well, there's safety in there,
Yeah.
in the group, right? That's also a trust of, I don't know this person, but Paolo knows this person. And how often have we been like, your friends are my friends?
Well, I mean, that's like with Fred, right? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I know Fred because, and I mean, I do, but
Well, you do.
I've only met him in person once, you know?
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Yep. Rapport, caring and candor, setting
Yeah.
expectations, transparency versus honesty, getting vulnerable, body language, just setting yourself up for success. There's so
Yeah.
many things that you can make a little tweak on.
I think being aware of how other people communicate is really important because I
Mhm,
think we can fall into the trap of, and I think I work on it, but I think I'm pretty good at this of like knowing how to communicate with certain people,
mhm.
right?
Yep.
And that's I told you I was going to go on a rant about meetings, and it's not just meetings actually. It's also going to social things, particularly if I'm going with someone.
Mhm.
And I think every single woman I've been with has said like, just don't be quiet at this thing. But it's the same with meetings, right? Like people have been told, oh, love you to speak up more in meetings. I'm like,
Yeah.
did you ask? Like, ask me
Mm.
a question during the meeting.
Yeah.
Like when you like, so anyone who runs meetings, or if you're having a conversation in a social circle, I always make a big point of like asking people, like, hey, what do you think about that?
Mhm.
I love Jeff Bezos's. There's so much you can learn from Amazon. I don't agree with all of it, but he always says like, when we have meetings, I'm the last person to speak.
Mm.
He said, if I speak first, no one else is going to say anything because if it questions me, they're going to feel uncomfortable. So he says, I always make the most junior person start, and then we go around the room and go up that way. And I think people do, and in social circles and in meetings, make sure you include everybody in a conversation. It's very easy. People get, I don't know if it's people feel a bit, they don't want to lose their, uh, their ranking in the social circle, by giving someone else some
Mm.
space to talk. But just, communication is also about kind of having the awareness of including people in the conversation, allowing it to flow and not being so rigid in what you wanted to talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a key to being a great facilitator, which is, I think, one of the hardest things to do when you're facilitating in a room, especially a large room. There's people that just naturally don't have an issue sharing their opinion, right? They feel confident, they speak up, they don't need to be asked. There's other
Yeah.
people that, unless, even when they feel 100% confident on something, if they're not asked, they're probably not going to share. Now, if you just ask them very simply, that they're happy to share. Um, but what you just said, asking, what did you think about that? Or if you see someone kind of, you can tell they want to say something, but they're like not gonna raise their hand. But the moment you ask them, like, hey, Paolo, like when we talked about that, I kind of saw, you perked up a little bit. Is there something, a thought that came in? And they'll pause for a second, and letting the pause and the silence be okay,
Yeah.
because that person's just gathering their thoughts. And you always have, and I've been that person in the room that's love sharing and we'll talk the whole time, because they're like, okay, well, if no one else is going to answer, I'll answer. Let's keep moving this thing along.
Yeah.
So being a really great facilitator, and I think teachers probably have to do this
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and it's not because I've seen people. I love running meetings because I like playing that facilitator role. Just saying, does anyone have any thoughts does not
hmm
count,
hmm
or any additional thoughts,
Right.
because that is implying that your additional thought is going to be counter to what has just been discussed.
Yeah, and
It's
yes, no
just
questions, like anything that
right.
can be answered yes or no is just not a powerful question.
Yeah, and don't get me started when you go out with a group of people and they all know each other from work,
hmm
and then all they fucking talk about is work.
hmm
So it's like, how am I supposed to be included in this conversation?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So part of communication is being aware of who else is in the communication circle,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Observing, watching body language, listening for ins, being okay with some silence and some dead space.
Yeah.
Um, Sam, if we do something called like close the deal calls, where we're on the call, they haven't signed, yet for a program or a keynote, and there's typically multiple people on the call. I'll be on the call and just silent in some cases, but I'm watching. So as Sam is talking and talking about different points, I'm seeing which decision maker is. Sam says something, and I see them light up, and I see them write something down, and I'll note that down, and I'm watching, and Sam was like, "Wow," he's like, "That is, it's like a superpower that you have." I just have a natural and nurtured ability to do that, but
Yeah.
I have to work at it.
Well, I have that. That's why I always run the tapes of my sales calls because when you're in the conversation, it can be hard to pay attention to all of that. But
Mhm.
I always look for those things like what's the buzzword that's catching
Yes.
people, and I learned to do that in music, and I think I may have said this on here before. Like when you're walking into the top executive at Universal Republic and playing your music, they're half doing something,
Mhm.
listening, but they hear music all day, and it is a case of like they're not going to say what they liked about it, but you're going to catch it. You're
Yeah.
going to see like the foot starts tapping at that part, or like the head starts bobbing. Yeah, and it's just about being observant, and that's a huge part of communicating. A lot of people don't know how to read a room or
Yeah.
to read someone's energy and then how to communicate back with them.
Yep. They don't know how, or they're so dead set and like, this is how I do things. If you don't like it,
Yeah,
tough. Like, okay.
yeah,
Being present, so key. Like, I'm gonna go back to horses again tonight. I love being with my horses because it's one of the times where, I have to be present. Because if for a moment I take my thought away when I'm, under a 2,000 pound Clydesdale,
yeah,
that's when accidents happen. And you have to be really, really present and aware of what's going on around you. And so I think when you and I will often talk about people have forgotten what it feels like to feel good.
yeah,
People have forgotten what it feels like to actually be present,
yeah,
to actually not have 10,000 things coming at you because we are constantly bombarded. I hear this all the time. It used to be you had to tell someone something 7 times in order for them to hear it. That was like in marketing. So I have so many leaders, they're so frustrated. I've already told this person, 3 times. I'm like, oh, quick, okay, cool. Only 4 more times to go. And they're like, what? I'm
well,
gonna
and that's
kill
it,
them
right?
before it's 7 times.
I've had situations where things will get told to you in the middle of something or just a discussion. So
hmm
it's a passing thing,
hmm
and it's like, of course you're not going to remember it.
Right?
Like my preferred way is putting it in a text or an email so I can always come back to it. Oh, what was it they said about it? And then check.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
But some people prefer to be told and be told 7 times to their face until they digest it.
And it's not even that they're thinking like, I don't want to digest this right now. It's that we have so much coming at us constantly between our phones, our computer screens, the television, the people around us. I mean, before I really got you and I joke about how calendared I am, but before I really got that in place, I would wake up in the middle of the night. Oh, I forgot this. Oh, I didn't call this person back. And it wasn't because I was being lazy. It wasn't because it was just too much. It was too much and I wasn't slowing down enough to say, let me write this somewhere, or I'll just grab my phone now and do a voice memo, or I'll grab the notes app or send a text message so that my brain can go, okay, you know what? I know exactly where that is. I don't have to keep it in my mind all day long, continually reminding myself to remember it.
Yeah.
Or when someone says to me like, "Oh, hey, remind me to do this." I'm like, "Hold on. Let me go write it down or I'll put it in my calendar because I know I'm not going to I'm going to maybe remember it, or I'll probably remember it when they say, "Hey, you were supposed to tell me to do that at 6 o'clock." And
Right.
now it's 7 o'clock. Um, and that's communication best through well-defined avenues, and typically it's always in writing. That's fine. You want to come in my office and tell me what you need? That's cool. But if you just tell me a whole bunch of stuff and turn around and walk out, I'm like, I was already in the middle of doing something. So now I'm a little bit annoyed that you just came and interrupted me. What was it
Yeah.
that you needed? I want to do it right, but can you send me an email? Could you write it down? Or don't leave my office so I can stop what I'm doing and I'll write it down.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a huge thing. And I always say that to people, like, you know, don't just talk at me.
Mm,
Get my attention first
mm.
because there probably is something I'm doing, and then tell me. But
Oh,
then I still need it to be written down.
yeah.
It's like even if you walk into someone's office and you tell them something, even just what, and this is probably another point to it, like confirm that or verify that they have understood what you said to them.
Yes.
You can't just assume that someone understands. Like even just saying like you got it, like
Don't
um,
do and don't accept a head nod as a
right,
answer. Um, There's a behavioral style, they're S's. I call it the high S head nod. They start nodding their head. You're like, oh, okay, cool. They're in agreement with me. They understand. Meanwhile, they have disconnected from you and they are just like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here
yeah,
anymore. I'm just gonna go do it the way that I feel safe and with my own system. So they leave. The one person's like, okay, they were nodding their head. Yes, they agree. And meanwhile, they don't agree, and then that happens. What you said was, what did you say? But it reminded me of two things, and one is asking permission. Like, if I'm gonna come into your office, this is asking permission goes a couple of ways. Like, one, "Hey, I see you're doing something. I have something that feels really urgent to me. Can I talk to you right now?" Like, get asking permission for it. Another thing is you talked about that lady that came on the call, and she's like, "I'm a high D, I just want all the facts."
yeah,
If you get the sense that someone is that way or is not that way, and you know you need to deliver something quickly or directly, I'll often say, "Hey, do I have permission to be direct? Or do I have permission to roll through this really quickly because we've got to be done in 20 minutes, and know that any questions that you have, I'm going to make sure they get answered. It's just not going to be right now, but you can send me an email and if we need to grab more time." So asking permission and then letting people know how, if something wasn't managed in that time, that they'll still have an opportunity.
yeah. And it's kind of along those lines too. Is don't put your expectations on someone else. So like
Mhm,
don't expect that this is going to be a priority for them. It might
mhm,
be like the most important thing in your day right now, but
mhm.
they might have five other things like, a sick kid at home or
Yeah.
figuring out what's for dinner for the family, all these things that's important to them. Don't put those expectations on them and expect them to do it on your timeline. That's a huge part of miscommunication
Yeah.
of, expecting someone to do something on your timeline.
Mhm,
I see a lot of breakdowns with that
mhm.
kind of stuff.
Or expecting that they have all the information that you have, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
both have different information. You're making decisions from different wells of knowledge. Um, Another thing I want to bring up with asking permission is when I always say, how direct do you, people are like, I'm really direct. Okay, cool. Tell me, what is a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most direct? What does a 10 look and feel like to you? right? So for me, a 10 is like you walk in, you're like, take out the garbage, and you walk out again. That's the most
Yeah.
direct. So someone will be like, okay, I'm a 10. Okay, cool. What is a 10? Well, come in, be warm. Like, how was my day? Am I okay? Automatically, I know their 10 is not my 10,
Yeah.
right? I don't want a lot of small talk, but just a little small talk just to check in. Okay, then tell me what you need. And make sure I understand. So if I need some questions. So now I'm like, okay, their 10 is a my 5.
Yeah.
And then it's my choice to decide, hey, if I really want this person to hear me, if I want to get my desired outcome from this conversation, and as long as my intentions are good and it's a win-win, I know that I've got to take some of my directness and my bluntness and I have to really soften it.
Yeah. You have to
Or
bring it to your 5
yeah,
for them,
for
or
this,
whatever, other
and
way
you
around.
don't have to. People are like, I don't. Yeah, now you're telling me I have to do that. You don't have to do anything. This is all a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. I mean, one trick I learned a while back, especially when I was dealing with the team at the gym, is
Mm,
instead of even say like instead of saying how do you feel about it, it's like how do we feel about?
mm,
Because when you say we, it's less confrontational and it's less like you're asking them to either agree with you or not agree with you. It's like we're in this together kind of thing.
right.
And just
Team.
little subtle changes to your language can really change and impact how you communicate.
Yeah.
One point I definitely want us to touch on is that the words versus action
Mm,
side of things with communication, because nothing, especially when it comes to leadership, again, at home or at work, you can say something, but if you don't do it,
mm-hmm.
you're not gonna your communication is just completely shot because no one's gonna actually pay attention to what you said and really listen to you.
Mm-hmm. Help me understand if I'm. You're saying that if you have a conversation about something and there's an action, but you don't do the action, that person is less likely to listen to you.
So it's like, okay, we're gonna start doing this.
Mm,
When a customer calls in, we're gonna do this, and then this is gonna happen, and then that's gonna happen, and then you're the one who answers the phone, and your team hears you, and then you
mhm.
don't do what you've just laid out as the
Ah,
new
yeah.
process. Like that is huge. Your actions have to match your words because your
Totally.
actions are a communication.
Well, that's the old like parenting, right? Do what I say, not as I do. That
Yeah.
doesn't work. Doesn't work in parenting, and it doesn't work in professional relationships, and it doesn't work in
Yeah.
personal relationships.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with accountable leadership. I think you and I are going to be starting to talk about this a lot more. But accountable leadership, and really at its core, the highest form of leadership. And if you really took it down, accountability is not mandated, right?
Hmm.
Accountability is inspired. And so many people come to us like, no one's accountable. And everyone wants to pass their work off, accountable, 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 and hold them accountable. Accountability is inspired. And when you create a culture with a set of core values, stuff that you and I talk about, where accountability is just a way of life that, like, I would rather die than let you down.
Well, don't
Like,
do that, but you can let
but
me down.
you know what I mean. It's not about the responsibilities, the tasks, right? Those are all important, but it's not about just getting the task done. It's like, if I don't do that, and I told Paolo I was going to do that, I'm going to let him down. And I'm like, we've got each other's back. So I'm going to come hell or high water, make that happen. And if I can't, I'm going to say, hey, buddy, like I screwed up. I screwed up. I forgot. We were going to do this tomorrow. I need more time. You and I have had these conversations.
Yeah.
And that's where you just have to, that's being a person of your word, that's having integrity, that's all of those things. And yeah, it's like the boy who cried wolf. If you keep saying something and then not doing it,
Yeah.
people stop listening, people stop believing you.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to the point which I think we've kind of talked around it, but we haven't really said it, that communication isn't the words that are spoken, it's how you make someone feel.
Mm.
Because you could
Oh,
sit in silence and communicate with someone, right? Like
yeah.
that's why they always say the comfortable silence is when you're with people that you're just on the same wavelength as. You could just
Yeah.
sit in silence and not feel awkward at all.
Talking would actually ruin it. Like there's times when it's like,
Yeah,
oh man, words cannot even capture right now And people don't remember what you said, right? We talk about this in sales a lot.
Yeah.
They remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And we're so powerful. We are so powerful, just human being creatures. When you were talking about like at the gym, I think that's a unique perspective. I mean, you're really physically working with people's bodies, right? They're doing the things, but you know, you're touching, you're making connections, you're assisting, you're watching like are they having trouble pushing
Oh,
this weight up? Should I
uh,
ask more?
yeah. The looking for people's signs of
Mhm.
like, are they going to throw up? Are they going to push themselves to a point where they get hurt?
I almost
Is
did with
this
you.
too easy? Do I need to make this harder?
Mhm.
And that's what a lot of my, people I've trained have said. Like, it's amazing. You always know, like, just how much to, like, how do you know that this is the right weight?
Yeah.
Like, because I can just tell from how your body is. I can
Mhm.
read your body language that well now.
Yeah.
But to your point, what I think was really made me effective at understanding people is when you're in the. I don't think people understand until you've had a trainer, because I'll tell you this: when I work out with other people that I have, outside of Amy, if I haven't worked out with people before, I feel awkward. Someone watching me, I'm like, now I know how all of these people have felt for the
Yeah.
last 20 years. And you're getting, a lot of the time you're getting people at their most vulnerable, right? Like, a lot of people don't start personal training until they've hit rock bottom of like
Mhm.
how they feel, how they think they look, and all of that.
Mhm.
So you really have to learn to, you can't be overly critical if they need corrections and things like that, because at the end of the day, we're not just talking about money. We're not just talking about, a deadline that needs to be met. This is someone's body,
Yeah.
and if you break it, it's not. It ain't good.
And how yeah, and how you make them feel. Like there's a lot of trust. You're putting
Yeah.
trust where sometimes you don't even trust your own self with your especially if I've felt like that before. Like I don't even trust my own body with myself because I feel like I keep making the wrong decisions or I
Yeah.
feel like I'm making the right decisions but I'm not getting my desired outcome. And that's where like coaching, whether it's personal training or business coach or life coach or whatever it might be, it's it brings this perspective to you that you don't get on your own. And when you're working with someone that's great and they have an awareness around how is this person feeling? What are the signs this person is giving me? Whether it's physical, mental, emotional, it is really, really life changing. And 20
Yeah.
years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, I would have thought it was crazy, whole life coaching, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then to spend money, like, I'll write checks for 15, $20,000 to work with someone for the year now, whereas before it's like, oh my God, $500 a month. I, it all becomes relative because as you start doing it and you start getting results from it, it's just you,
Yeah.
it's still you doing the work, but it's like, man, the investment is just unbelievable. And sometimes I'll joke and I'm like, God, I feel like sometimes my clients just pay me to be a friend, like
Well, I was
just
about
to
to
be
say that,
heard.
right? Like, and I've said before how much I value my therapist,
Hmm.
and a lot of the times it's not. She doesn't sit there and give me a bunch of advice and stuff, but she has created a space where I feel like I can be completely myself. I can
Yep.
talk about whatever I'm facing, what I'm dealing with, and sometimes just talking it out is all you need to do.
Yep.
And not to say that she doesn't. She's a great therapist, but like the you know, that's what that means to me. So it's not even a question of ever stopping doing it,
Yeah.
because, you know, and to your point, like eventually, if I met someone, I'm like, just spending 20 minutes just to chat with them, that might be worth a $20,000 investment,
Yeah.
because that 20 minutes is going to fuel me for the next week, and I'm going to get all this stuff done and get that money back
Yeah.
in 10x.
Yeah. It's cool. It's very cool. And that goes back to something we talked about a couple weeks ago and about leadership. And mentioned that there's no neutral conversations. When we're communicating, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, you are either building someone up or you're tearing them down, right? It's to me, there's just really no neutral. It could be the
Yeah.
person you're passing on the street. And like I'm the first to be guilty. Someone pisses me off while I'm driving, they might get the finger. I really am trying not to do that
I've
as
gotten
much.
so much better at that.
Getting better. but I negatively impacted that person. And I might have some justifications, but like, again, it's tattooed on my body. We came, we saw, we loved. Is this coming from love? No, that is not loving. And it doesn't matter what the reason is, right? What my
Yeah.
justification is. It's how do I want to show up in this world? So I want to impact positively. Um, every time you open your mouth, every time you take an action, as simple as how many billions of times do you think people ask, like, hey, how are you? But no one actually answers because it's just what we do as a formality. Hey, how are you? Good, good. How are you? And just keep walking. And so when you actually stop and it's like, no, like, well, no, how are you? Oh, I'm good. Oh, good. What's going good today? People are like shocked about that. Like, oh, I'm at work, but I get to go out to dinner with the person I love the most after this. All right, awesome. You know, it's like totally changes how that person shows up for that rest of that day and then everyone that they're interacting with after that. So your one little bit of kindness, your one purposeful communication, rippled effect to that person, to the next 20 people that they met and then who those people met. It's like so powerful. It blows my
I think
mind actually.
the purposeful communication was a big, what you just said there. I think is a huge, how 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 you say something as simple as "Hey, how was it going?"
Mhm.
could be the difference in them telling you and them not telling you.
Yeah.
And we all have those people in our lives where we're like, we will open up with them, but we won't open up with someone else who asks us that question, and
Mhm.
that's because of the energy that that person's giving off, and maybe your energies just don't vibe. But yeah, there's so many ways that we can improve our communication without it being the words we say. It's how we say it, our body language,
Mhm.
all these things we've talked
Eye
about today.
contact. I
Yeah,
ask you, "How are you?" I'm gonna keep eye contact with you. I'm waiting for an answer. I want to hear what you have to
yeah,
say. I don't wanna have a whole hour-long conversation with you if you're just a random person, probably, if I'm
right,
doing my day. But, like, let's ask questions that we actually want answers to, right?
yeah,
Let's slow down a little bit and check in on our people. And it just might be that stranger that you are never ever gonna see again. But you have an option and a choice how to leave that person and how to
yeah,
impact that person.
yeah. And just I'd love people to just think about this. That communication is not just you getting good at telling people stuff.
Mm.
I've been accused of that before, of like, well, you don't communicate well because I didn't tell you something. I'm like, well, fair. I had other stuff I was thinking about and I just forgot to tell you or to text you about it.
Mhm.
But that doesn't make someone a bad communicator. That just means they're forgetful,
Mhm.
right? Again, it's all these things we've talked about today is how you show up as a good
Yeah.
communicator.
Well, because the person on the other side, right? We love to apply meaning to things, and we are all
Right.
guilty of this. Oh, Paolo didn't text me. He said he was going to text me. He doesn't love me, doesn't care about me. I'm not a priority. He doesn't consider me. Everyone else is important. Oh, he got his workout in. Oh, we start running with these stories of what this means. And now we've got this break. We've got this break in the relationship that started over something that was not what it was at all.
Yeah.
So sometimes just stopping and asking yourself, like, do you believe that person's intention was bad, or do you believe it was good? Now, if you had the same conversation 30,000 times, sure, it could get frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I do my best to always, and it's one of our company things when I was at Showcase was, assume positive intent because
Mm,
that makes having conversation, especially difficult conversations, it
yeah.
makes it that much easier to have. And I think that again is where how you create space with people. Like
Yeah.
I know if you give me some hard truths, if about advice or whatever, I
Hmm.
know where it's coming from, so I'm not
Yeah.
going to get upset about it.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone else came in who I didn't have that relationship with, and be like, "Fuck you, dude,"
Right.
and get defensive about it.
Another little trick I try, especially if there's conflict, I deal with some, C-suite level conflict. We'll call it that. Two very, very strong people. And there's typically been a really big blow up. It's gotten personal, like, and it's always personal. It's never just business because it's two human beings. But often the suggestion will be is to go in with start with the end, Like if you and I had a conflict and like we're just coming at each other from 20 different ways, but I know that you want to stay working for the company and I want to stay working for the company and we have to work together. I might not know how the heck we're going to do it and we might be all sorts of annoyed with each other, but if I come in and I say, Paolo, my goal to leave this meeting is I want us to work together. I want us to be able to work together. I want you to thrive and do well in your role, and I want to be able to do well in my role. So my intention, my goal is that we figure out how to do that. And if you can say you also want to achieve the same thing, then we're winning,
Yeah.
right? Because now you're working towards a common goal. And again, you don't have the solution, and it doesn't mean that there's not hurt there. But if you don't know what the other person wants, does that other person want you out? If they're like, no, I want you fired because it's either you or me, that's going to be a very different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, for
But
sure.
if I tell you from the beginning, or a personal relationship, like, I love you, I want to work through this. Like, this is whatever. Let's figure it out, but let's make sure, do we both want the same thing? And if we do, then okay, then we can do it. If we don't want the same thing, then we're just going to keep going around in circles.
Yeah. Comes back to communication. It's all about it.
All right. That was fun. This is fun. This is a
It was,
good
yeah.
Sunday
You said,
night.
oh, we're going to keep it short and sweet today, 55 minutes later.
I know. Well, this is our sign off to go and communicate and be with the ones that we love and set our intentions for this upcoming week.
Yep.
And it's a choice.
Well,
and then with
these
that,
guys, they're listening to this on a Thursday, so.
yes.
Well, that's when it comes out. I don't know when people actually listen.
I know. You always love correcting me with that. Thank you for correcting my communication. Thank you for keeping us on track.
Well, I don't know if I was correcting your communication. I was just correcting your error.
This is fun.
All right, I'm waiting for you. You're the sound off queen.
Until next time, friends. Bye for now.